and this is the crazy thing now, I suppose, 6 months after I lost Ty, I met Jay. That's the crazy part of my story.
Welcome to an episode of Find Your Voice, a movement led by yours truly, Aaron Dew, a guy who has overcome crippling anxiety, adversity, and difficulty like so many of you in life, whose main goal now is to help you combat your excuses, take control of your life, write your own story, and most importantly, find your voice. So now, without further ado, I welcome the host of the show himself, Mr. Aaron Dew.
What's going on, people? Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Find Your Voice. And today we have an incredible story, and one that I was just speaking to our guest today about that actually made me emotional about 37 minutes ago. So hopefully I can keep my emotions intact, because this is going to be a story that I think is going to resonate with many of us throughout our life. I think it's something that's not spoken about probably enough. And I'm just so grateful that we have our guest on the show today to share her brave story and be so transparent in her words. So Rammi, welcome to the show. How are we doing today?
Hi, good morning, Aaron. Hi, everybody else. I'm good, thank you for having me on.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. I'm very excited to share this story. And I say that with a little bit of nerves as well, because I know these stories affect me as well, because I almost feel I've been a part of that journey, and it is been a journey for you, an incredible journey, but what resilience you've shown. So if you could, for the listeners of today's episode, just run us through a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your life, and then into that story as well, please.
Yeah, so probably straight up front, I might as well say that this is a story of me losing my spouse, my late husband, Tyrone. So where do I begin? I guess right at the beginning is when I was writing it. It was a question I asked myself: where do I start? And my start was basically, probably quite conventional, nothing normally normal in terms of my childhood. I was born in West London, from Ealing, raised here. My parents moved kind of out to the sticks for a bit. So my primary school education was in Berkshire. And I had a pretty stable, happy childhood. I have a brother who's 6 years younger than myself. Studies and academia was important. My dad's, third generation immigrant. So he's a successful businessman. My brother also works for him. For me, I really enjoyed studies, and I chucked myself into my studies. I achieved a pretty good degree from the University of Reading in politics and history. And then I went down the kind of did a graduate scheme in the civil service, and was fast tracked to quite a senior level into the communications field within government, so advising politicians, working on some really exciting stuff. And it was at that time that I retouched with an old friend. I got back in contact with Tyrone. We'd met at uni, but we were just friends. He was at Brunel and I was at Reading, and I used to go university for their kind of socials with friends. So we met through that, and we actually talked online a lot. So that was kind of back in the day with MSN, Messenger and everything. Yeah, and a great kind of friendship, but remote, I suppose. We didn't see each other very much. But then when I started working after university, I suppose I was quite young. I was 22, and I chucked myself into this career where I was one of the youngest people, especially when you're working in like politics, and nobody looked like me and nobody sounded like me. It was a very, male, older male environment. There weren't many young Asian women working in that field then. It was a bit like by myself. Some of my friends had gone on to do further studies like masters and things. So a lot of my uni friends had done that, and a lot of my high school friends. So I didn't really have that network in central London. It was a really exciting place as well, working and everything. So I kind of looked up Ty, and we spoke and we met, started dating, and a friendship, progressed from there. That's all I can say. Like, he was my best friend. So although we met at 18, I suppose we kind of got together more in our mid-20s. And yeah, soon enough, I introduced him to my mum, my dad. Just a bit to say about Ty was his background. He was West Indian. of an Indian origin. He was really proud of his Caribbean roots. We used to like laugh about it. He did not acknowledge him being Indian in any way, even though he looked it. And I was like, oh, like Thai, like you are Indian. We used to joke about it all the time. He's like, no. And he had an Indian middle name, but he never used that. He used his West Indian name. And he was just incredible. Like he was so gifted. So he was also on a graduate scheme for, he was a computer software programmer and just incredibly bright. And he'd been accepted to the University of Cambridge at 18. And we used to talk about this and his fears around it because he was just a down-to-earth guy. He was into his cars, his music, the garage scene back then and all of that. And he didn't really want to go off to Cambridge. He was from Surrey, but he really wanted to just stay in London. So yeah, he joined the University of Cambridge to go to Brunel because he felt it was more him. But he was so incredibly gifted. He achieved a first class honours. It's something I mention a lot to people, like, oh, you really talk about his like intellectual ability. And I think it's really pertinent to the story of kind of what happened. I think his brain, his amazing gift that he had was his intellect. So smart, beyond something I ever comprehended in anybody else. I've never seen it. Like, yes, with computers and technology, but also like with maths and numbers, his brain was just off a scale. But he was really modest with it. And he almost thought, oh, that's just how everybody is, When he looked at a problem or an equation or something like that, even a work problem, he worked through it so fast, he'd have like the rest of the day off. And yeah, and most people would be still working on it to get calls. And especially when he was sick a lot, he would still be respected by those he worked with. And he was meant to be on sick leave, but he would get calls from managers and who would just talk personally with him. But he was interested in work all the time and what on in the workplace, and he'd help people out. Always sometimes when he shouldn't have been, because he liked to use his mind. He'd be busy. We enjoyed the London life, socializing with friends and all of that. We're both on kind of like graduate schemes and enjoying that loads. And then we went on to get married. We had a fusion wedding in Windsor. Like it was both cultures. It was a massive Punjabi affair because I'm Punjabi, and Ty's family was smaller, but like they were really keen on getting a Caribbean influence. So we had a steel band and all of that. It was just an amazing wedding. And then we went off to honeymoon, Hawaii, and we did a lot of traveling those early years into our marriage. I think nearly every, how like you work hard, play hard. That was our motto. I know a lot of people say it, but we really lived and breathed it. And my mum worked for British Airways. She's only recently retired, and so I had kind of enjoyed her free tickets and I did as well. So we got opportunity to travel to more like far-flung places than maybe we would have if we didn't have that opportunity. Probably didn't discover Europe as much actually, because we were off to Thailand, Bali. We went to Canada a lot. So the other thing about Ty was he's Canadian by birth. He was born in Scarborough in Toronto, and he was really proud of his Canadian roots as well. So we went to Canada a lot because I had my cousins there, and we did a lot of family weddings out there. So, in a really close amount of time, in about 5 years, my family really got to know him. I think because it was that age where we were just going to our firsts. And a lot of my cousins were the same age. So I was one of the first to get married. But then soon after me, it was like a domino effect. So many weddings. And I think it was just a great, gosh, you can't think about that now with what's going on. That at weddings, how it is with the Asian culture. It's just like a massive socializing place anyway. Yeah, it's not just that wedding day, it's the week leading up to it and everything. And he loved it. He never had that in his kind of upbringing. So he just enjoyed it so much. My uncles, my aunts, everybody just gathered around him. He was like the center of attention, when he was talking about things. So I was really special in that way. I never thought my family would take to this guy who wasn't like of my culture or anything. I was like really surprised that he was so popular with them, and he was just generally like that type of guy, very popular and down to earth and kind. Just really kind as well and helpful. So we came back from all these holidays. We just lived in a flat, so we didn't have huge financial commitments, but we thought, oh, okay, let's start thinking about buying a house and maybe settling down and doing the kind of thing about having a baby, because we thought, oh, it's been 5 years now, maybe we should think about it. We weren't obsessive about it and we didn't stress, we just thought it would happen. So we bought a house, like in 2012, our first property together. And that was great. Like, it was in Surrey. It was a nice family home. That's how I'd describe it. Probably like a dream home. It had so much potential. We were both into property as well. I was, because my family were as well. So I wanted to do something that was a project, and we bought our house and thinking, okay, over the years we can do this stuff, extend it, have children there. Then I think, so that's 2012. A few years, we enjoyed the whole having friends over, doing the more grounded thing rather than traveling, more of a focus on our careers. But I think that happened naturally, because as you get more responsibility and experience at work, you can climb up the ladder. I'd got a promotion. Ty had just started at the Financial Times. He was working at Marie Curie Cancer Care before that, which is a lot of irony with his first job, actually. But he went off to the Financial Times. He was kind of headhunted for that role. He'd been there for 2 years. I'd just started a job in the Ministry of Justice. It was one of my dream jobs, like at a senior level in communications, advising politicians in all aspects of criminal justice, which was an area I was interested in. And it was the December before he'd started experiencing severe headaches. And when I say, people say, how do you know you've got this illness? And I'll go on to describe what it was. But what are the symptoms? I get asked that. I got asked that a lot when he was ill, less so now, but definitely at the time. And I said, well, I've heard it can be so many different things, but with Ty, it was these headaches that he said he's never had before, and we didn't mess about. You don't mess about with a head, right? You don't, it's not something you ignore. I don't know, maybe you could ignore a pain in your arm or a leg or something like that for a while, but with his head, it was impacting him so much. So me and his family got him a private scan, an MRI. Immediately, within a few hours, it showed, the sonographer said, there's a mass on the left-hand side of his brain. Now, he was like, how do you take that? Well, I wasn't expecting the result straight away. That was a surprise to me. I thought, it takes a while, it goes off for analysis. And we were just still in the scanning area and they were telling us. I had no idea what it could be. I thought the year before we'd been, we'd been some tropical island. I think it was Bali, whatever, but I can't remember the holiday exactly. But I thought, gosh, he'd had a virus. I thought it's a virus. It's something he's caught on holiday, because he's such a fit, healthy young male in his early 30s. I just didn't think it could be anything more severe than that. So that at that private scan said, okay, we're going to have to send this off to specialists in this area, in neuro kind of area of the brain. We're going to have to send this to St George's, South London. They've got a neuro specialist wing there, and doctors and surgeons. So even to that still didn't flag up any real concerns to me. I thought, okay, the best people should look at it. It is a concerning area of the body. So I went off to work the week after. Ty didn't. He stayed off sick, but he'd been given dexamethasone, which we hear a lot about now in the news. It was a steroid which suppressed the kind of mass, the swelling. So it dealt with his symptoms immediately. He was feeling better, but he still had a slight headache, but not as excruciating as it had been the preceding week. And then, we had a call from St George's Hospital in South London, and we were asked to go in. Even now, I think back, all I was thinking about, oh my God, how am I going to ask my boss for the afternoon off? It's strange now, but I just started a new job, and that was my concern right then, not even my husband, because I didn't think it would be anything still that serious. And then Ty's brother called me, and he was way more anxious. When you talk to somebody else who's more stressed, I guess it can make you feel that way. Yeah. And I was like, oh, right, okay, no, people are worried. This is this could be something else. And I don't know, sometimes I kick myself thinking, as his wife, I didn't have that instinctive reaction, actually. I was more upbeat and positive. Actually, that describes me of the kind of 3 years after. I was always quite positive, and actually I know why it was. I mirrored Ty. He was always positive. He was always like, no, there'll be another treatment. There'll be this, there'll be that. I'll fight this, I'll do that. There was always, he never looked, literally, we never discussed his death. We never, in the 3 years of his diagnosis and his illness, we never discussed his passing away. So we went to the hospital, and I guess I won't beat around the bush, but they basically confirmed they had a screen up on the computer. It was an MDT setting, which means multidisciplinary team setting. There was an oncologist there. There was a neurosurgeon there. There was a doctor there, and a cancer care nurse, which they always have with these diagnoses, or they should. Actually, I heard that's not always the case, but I guess we were fortunate. There was a full team. They were set up for big news, right? And then they delivered the diagnosis, and it was called a grade 2 astrocytoma, which I've become the world's specialist on after all the medical experts. And it was classified, it took me much researching after, as a low-grade brain tumour, which is such an oxymoron in terms, because how can the word tumour go against a word low grade? I didn't understand it at the time, and actually now, and this is not to knock people who've had this diagnosis, because I've heard you can live many years with a low grade, but percentages suggest in somebody like Ty, it will, within a 5 to 10 year period, become aggressive. And then it basically turned into cancerous growth. But he had surgery, and he had 2 surgeries that year, and he bounced back after both quite quickly. He returned to work while he was working from home a lot. But I think because he's a young, fit male, he literally had no other, pre-existing conditions. He recovered really well from his surgery. So one was in January and the other one October. He only went for the second one because basically, the tumour would start growing again. Within that period, that first year, Ty was still optimistic. He was still like, but they're saying surgery. That's always a good sign, right? When someone says surgery for cancer, like, I think he from his reading, his family's and mine, the fact they could operate for us was, oh, that's great. They wouldn't suggest that. And we kept asking in our naivety after both surgeries, well, how much have you removed? How much have you removed? Give us a percentage. We were all kind of like numbers and data obsessed in the family. So tell us. The doctors, they always looked at me strange when I asked that question. And I think it's almost like you think you can't push a doctor to say something they don't want, because they're the professionals. You think you can't, but actually, I think you can. And they're like, oh, about 90%. They said that there's about 90%. I was like, oh, that's amazing. But wait, you don't want even 1% of tumor left. It's definitely not 10%. You don't want anything left. So from after October surgery, within a few months, it was starting to grow again. And the next option was radiotherapy for Ty. And this is when they confirmed it had changed grade from a low grade to grade 3, still not a grade 4, which is called a GBM, a glioblastoma. It still hadn't turned to that, but this was a point now they said you need to suppress it with radiotherapy. Now, we had, me and his family, many debates, maybe arguments, which I regret now actually, but it's just the emotion of the time, right, where I think we would have heated discussions about it. They were adamant that Ty shouldn't have radiotherapy. I didn't know enough, but I became more well informed on it, and I was worried that because Ty's father had started looking into proton beam therapy, and I just didn't know much about it. So we all start reading about it, and I spoke to doctors about it. Now, his NHS team were against it. They wanted him to have radiotherapy because that was the NHS standard. That's what they advocated. Now, I was nervous of going outside that cancer path treatment, but we did. We took Ty to Switzerland. He stayed there for over 6 weeks. He received the most intense kind of it's a form of radiotherapy, but it's more localized and precise to a tumor. And it was hard for me because that's, I suppose, where my grief kicks in now. Because here's the thing: it wasn't just to do with my emotions. Obviously, started from the day of his diagnosis. Maybe I just hadn't realised that, and I was losing him a little bit all the time. But this is when I saw it the most, because he had to go to Switzerland for the first time in our marriage. We were going to be apart because I had to work. I had to stay at home and work and pay the bills. Well, having said that, Ty had an amazing work, so he still was being paid, but I had to support that. And I couldn't go. And that was hard. I think that was really hard for me, because I thought, well, I should be the person by him. I need to be the person who's got him through his surgery, who's helped with all his decision making, who's, his wife. The wife should be somebody, your partner during such a major treatment. But I couldn't go. His family went, and they got him through it. Like he did well out there, and he came back with the most amazing results. That the growth had you couldn't see it on scans anymore. And that was the best part of his treatment over the 3 years. That it was a 9-month period where he was back near enough back to his old self. And in that time, we went on more holidays. Like we didn't stop being married. We didn't stop, and we actually maybe reprioritized things. We kind of thought, no, like forget it. We're gonna still live that life of having fun, because we just don't know what's around the corner. And then a few holidays, and amongst this time, which is kind of merges into another story for me, is our infertility struggle as well. Now, like we start trying for a baby, and we'd been trying for 2 years, but you've got to remember then Ty was also diagnosed with a major illness, so it wasn't the same thing. And the irony is that actually his fertility was fine, but it was at threat, because if he was going to go on to chemotherapy, it would have been under threat. But I had unexplained infertility. We did probably too quick, but we were fast tracked to IVF because of his diagnosis. And I don't know, now I think about it, that's just a lot for a person to handle after what I was going through anyway. But it became a new obsession for me almost. I don't know, a distraction, but I just wanted a baby. Like I just thought, I need a baby. Like I have to have a baby. That's just, it'll give me something to live for. It'll give Ty something to live for. He wasn't as bothered. Like he was quite relaxed.
I'm sorry to interrupt here. Can I just ask just about that? Actually, something just come in my head. Do you think in that moment when you wanted a baby, that was to hold on to something that was Ty should he pass away, or was you still optimistic that he would still be here and this baby would keep him alive?
I think subconsciously I was preparing for the worst.
Okay, so you just wanted a piece of him.
I think so. I think as much as I think for him it would have been a motivator, I think I was thinking differently.
Which explains the obsession, obviously, for moving it forward.
That's it. And there wasn't much to do, like with his treatment in this 9-month period. So we did chuck ourselves into the IVF, but it was tiring for him. I remember thinking that afterwards, like hospitals after hospitals for himself, and then we had to go. And I don't know. I wish somebody at the time, a doctor or somebody, had told me that maybe wait, but they're not going to tell you because it's your own personal choice. Are you ready, mentally, emotionally? Maybe you just guys need to think about Ty's health. And there was a sign, I guess, from somebody. I'm not overly religious, but maybe God was saying, no, I'm not going to give you a baby. Like, you've got to focus on your husband. It's about him, and wait. Just you guys wait. There's more to come, So after his proton beam therapy, I think I've had 2 unsuccessful rounds of IVF, and we were in a pretty low place, like the end of that summer. And then it hit that he had regular scans throughout the 3 years of his diagnosis. So it was just one of those regular scans. We went along. We always kind of feared the worst, hoping for the best. But it was one of those where they said, I think he'd had 2 previous stable scans, which were the first times he'd had stable scans. But this one, it was like a 3rd one that year. And it was, they said, the growth was back. But worse now, there was a new growth on the other side of his brain. So it wasn't just the left-hand side. So the left-hand side of the brain controls your speech center. and some of your short-term memory. So Thai's speech was quite affected. It was beginning to be affected, but there was a new area now in the mid-center of the brain, and now there was no treatment. There was no radiotherapy for that, because if he had further radiotherapy, he would have had major kind of disabilities. So that was not an option. Yeah, and the proton beam had failed. I was so angry that the proton beam had failed, because it had cost a lot of money. And that money doesn't buy health, and money doesn't mean anything in these cases. You can chuck all the money in the world at a cancer diagnosis, but it didn't get us anywhere. And he was now, for the first time in 3 years, or it's been about 2.5 years by this stage, he was starting to become his diagnosis. That was a strange thing to see. Oh, look, I has a brain tumor, and now he's showing the symptoms of that brain tumor, which he probably did have before, but now I saw it with some of his actions, same things he was saying and doing. And that's why I say it was so difficult to see it in Thai, because of his amazing intellectual ability. Simple things that Thai did. Like, he was so good at DIY. He was genius at DIY. And woodwork and carpentry was his major skills. He built bespoke units and shelves and things like that. He did it for his hobby. And he couldn't do that. He couldn't take a simple measurement and understand it. I think he was measuring his brother's kitchen and he was getting things wrong. And he just never got things wrong, We're like, oh yeah, and I was reading with his niece once, and I remember he was just getting simple letters wrong and things. It's almost like a dyslexia had formed. He didn't recognize these things in himself, or if he did, he wasn't able to express it. He was frustrated a lot, I think, and that probably was his way of saying there's something wrong. But he got angry quicker. He had a shorter temper. I didn't have short temper either, so that was strange. I thought it was a treatment, but it was probably both. A bit of a treatment, a bit of everything he'd been through, and the cancer itself. And after proton beam, after being told it's back, he was now offered chemotherapy for the first time. And that hit him hard. I can't say, maybe a lot of young people would be like, oh, as long as there's a problem, there's a solution. I can keep doing it. But he never wanted to go on drugs. He was taking anti-seizure medication. That wasn't that severe. He didn't even want that, to be honest, but because he had a few seizures. But this chemotherapy, the first round of it, he took there were 3 options, and he took the one that was the least aggressive, which again, in hindsight, we should have gone for the most aggressive, would have given him a longer lifespan. But he just didn't want that effect on his body and mind. And yeah, he took the first course. Now, at this time, this is when I started exploring other options. We were becoming desperate. So we took him, because like I said earlier, that my mum worked for British Airways, we could go abroad quite easily without any thought. We'd been to India once for a second opinion, and that was when the surgeon said, yeah, have an operation, see what happens. So the first time we went, it was more of a holiday. Now, his family and mine were happy with. My family were amazing, but they were always, whatever I wanted to do, they would support me. I think maybe in the back of their heads, my mum and dad were like, don't go to India with a sick man, don't go, that's ridiculous. But they supported me. I went alone this time, whereas Ty had gone with my mum and dad before, but I went alone this time and with him, and it was such a hard trip. It was so difficult. The immigration things, simple things you take for granted when you're traveling. He was getting wrong, and I was getting angry, and I was getting frustrated, and then I felt guilty about that because I knew he was sick. But I'm like, Ty, how Indian immigration officers are, when you get to border control, right? And he doesn't speak Hindi or Punjabi or whatever, so. But he looks Indian, and they just view that suspicious anyway. They don't get a guy could look Indian but not understand his language, and they just put pressure on him. And the more pressure he was getting, I go, oh my God, this is going to end badly. Miraculously, he managed to remember details that gone through with him about where we're staying, simple things. But yeah, I think the immigration officers did think it was odd. But he had a medical note that where he was going to a hospital in Delhi. So he got through the border control, but it was really hard. And I was so nervous that, he was sick and he'd be taken in a room somewhere and sent back alone. But we got through. We stayed with my dad's friend in Delhi, and we got him another opinion. But it was relentless. We stayed there for a week, and I don't know. We just, looking back now, I was like, why did we go? It was hard. It was grueling. Indian hospitals are awful. Even the most private, amazing ones, I'm sorry, they're still behind the times. I suppose that's just the weather and the climate as well. It doesn't help. And then the doctor there, a private consultant neurosurgeon, said, like, I can see the deterioration in your husband. It's hard for Thai because this guy was speaking broken English. He was speaking perfect English, but Hindi as well. So I don't think Thai grasped it all. And my dad's friend was there who escorted us throughout the trip. And we looked at each other saying, well, now the third opinion from somebody abroad doesn't look good. That's not great. Because we'd already looked into opinions back in England. We'd Skyped doctors in America, Switzerland. We'd done all of that. But yeah, we went back with the scan results, took it to the NHS, and they said, yeah, it's kind of like, we told you so. We know that he has to stay on chemo. If anything, he now needs to go on the most aggressive kind. And Ty still refused. He was stubborn. Like he knew what he wanted and what he didn't. He wasn't, railroaded into things. He kind of thought about what he wanted. I'm not sure he always grasped the extent of things, but one thing is about the drugs. He just had it in his mind that he didn't want to be on drugs, regardless of how serious his illness was. So I think maybe he took longer to go on the right chemotherapy than he should have taken, but eventually he did go on it. I think this is like when I've been writing, I think this is the point in my story where, like I've said to you, over this is a period of maybe 3 to 4 months where I noticed I was losing my husband. And that's a really difficult thing to say with cancer, but I felt it would become all about, our lives had become all about the next treatment, the next big thing, the next surgery, the next chemo, the next period where maybe it'll be okay, but then it will come back again. Like, we were always living on that edge of a cliff, I describe. Literally, our lives were like just on this fine balance where one thing could set it over the edge. For our marriage, no, our marriage was strong. It wasn't our marriage that was like, I never would have ever thought that. But I almost approached, and this is why I like to talk about the relationship aspect, I almost treated Ty like a kid. It became a carer relationship. I was doing the caring. I'm lucky, thank God. It wasn't actually that hard. He wasn't, bedbound or anything. But it was like, are you eating right? Are you taking your meds? Maybe you shouldn't go to work today. Are you doing your exercise? Gosh, now I've got a baby. I don't even think I have do that much for her than I did for Ty. But yeah, I was obsessive over his routines. It just gave me something to do, I think. But it did affect our marriage. Like, it wasn't the conventional marriage. There was no hugs and things like that. That stuff had stopped. And I think it's really, really important that I say these things in losing a spouse, because it's the stuff that's not spoken about in a cancer diagnosis. Like, when you've got a parent or a child, there's this other side, the intimacy side, that our marriage had been massively affected like that. We were strong, but it was a different type of dynamic now. It was always just about and I was so protective over him. Like, if anybody, I didn't want him to be seen as like somebody who had a disability when we were out in public. And I mean, in that way, it was hidden, it being a brain tumor, but I didn't want people to judge him, because I had pride for him almost. Like, how would Ty feel? He was becoming yeah, he was becoming unaware maybe of people's reactions, and he'd lost his hair with chemo. He'd put on a lot of weight because of the steroids he was on. But I was, I was a bit like, oh God, what people think, you know? And then his friends and our family were just amazing. But I think maybe I hid things from people, and I don't think I did it on purpose. I think I didn't always know what was going to happen next. So people asked me the severity of it, or what's going, what now? And I always just talked about that moment. It was a very few people I talked about how I was feeling. I always described how Ty was, and today and this morning, how he woke up. I rarely talked about, even to the closest, even to my mum, even to my best friends. I never spoke about how is this affecting me. And it was having a massive effect by now. And I just want to talk a bit. That's why that's the beginning of my story of grief, was before he passed away. So that's why I thought, to mention some of the feelings I was going through before I got to the stage of having to deal with the loss. For me, it's really important to say that I began to feel a sense of loss before I'd lost my husband, because I was grieving the loss of our marriage, or what could have been in our life, So within that kind of, after his third round of chemo, which was unsuccessful, that took us to like October, end of October 2018, and it'd been nearly 3 years. And it was unsuccessful. And well, the way I know it was unsuccessful is nobody tells you, oh, by the way, your chemotherapy's unsuccessful. No one says that. What happened was on the 10th of March, 2018, and this is a date that's kind of etched into my mind because it's my brother's birthday as well. And Ty had the worst day of his diagnosis, and one of the worst days of my life, I think. He got into the most aggressive rage. We were in our bedroom, it was early hours of the morning. He started throwing furniture around. He was a slim, tall guy, but I didn't know he had this much strength. Then I saw that day. He grabbed a TV, turned the TV unit upside down, and I think he recognized something was not right. He locked himself in the bathroom because I think for my safety and his, maybe he thought, I'm just going to do this. And then, it was just, I could hear screaming. And so I've been told it was a pain rage, like he was in the most excruciating pain. I don't know why I did this, but I called his dad rather than 999. And I don't know, there was a lot of, I think we were worried about what doctors and everybody would do at that time. So I then called the Royal Marsden, which is where Ty had received all his cancer treatment, and they took him in immediately. They didn't hesitate, which is very unusual that they take a patient in during an emergency kind of episode, because normally you just go to an emergency room. But I insisted, and they said, yeah, okay, he's being treated here. It's best for him to come here. They don't normally take emergency patients. They took him there. He was given a bed. He was immediately administered morphine. His pain, went, and therefore his rage went. But as he came around from the pain relief, what you then noticed is all, like some of his leg movement, his arm movement, his speech, everything had just deteriorated over the course of like 4 or 5 hours. And it was the tumor just growing at a rapid scale now. And his oncologist, that same man who I saw back at St. George's when I was rushed in for his first diagnosis, he was one of the MDT team that I described. Back then, something haven't mentioned yet is Ty asked those doctors how long he had to live. And then at that time, that oncologist had said to him, this is such a harsh comment, he said, I would stop paying into your pension now. That's really, really harsh, but he was a tough German guy. Like I don't know why, is that harshness in him that at this point now, 3 years after, I mean, we didn't make it to the 5-year mark. At 3, I appreciate the honesty now. So he walked me down the corridor with his family behind, and he said, you know what I'm going to say, don't you? I didn't, not at that stage, but as soon as he said those words to me, I was like, well, I do now. And we sat in a room, and it confirmed that Ty had a month to live. at the best. He said a few weeks, a month at the best case scenario. And yeah, it was an awful blow. But I saw it coming, I think. Some of his family didn't. My parents were in the room, they were just silent. Yeah, but I'll never forget the reaction of his own parents. It's still harder than even like my reaction. Is like, oh, because in that moment I'm like, yeah, well, he is their child and he was their baby. He was the youngest of the three. And yeah, I mean, almost, you shouldn't say it, but he was their golden child. And I mean, no offense to his other two siblings, but he was. I couldn't deal with that kind of raw emotion that came out from his mother. I think it was like, gosh, this is what it's like having a child. Actually, I know he's my husband, but this is the reality of losing a child. So that was hard. But we, decided that we wouldn't tell Ty. Like, Tyrone didn't have a grasp at this stage of what was going on. So we thought to protect him, and that was a joint decision. But we didn't really have a discussion about it, but it was just an unwritten thing. We agreed that we wouldn't tell him that he didn't have long to live. And we took him home. So I took him home to what should have been our house to build memories and future. And but I don't know if that was right or wrong. He could have been in a hospice, but that didn't feel right either. So yeah, we took him home, and I turned his dining room that he'd done DIY, put curtains up. It became the room, a hospital room, and his best friend helped put up like TV, so we had music on. Ty was into like reggae, so we had Bob Marley all the time playing, and it was a bed, but it became, it was going to be where he passed away, which is so harsh when you're turning a room, a room where you should live in. Literally, it's called a living room. Like, come on. You're turning it into a room that he's going to pass away, and it was just so harsh. Like, my house was becoming a hospice. So we did it, the whole family. Oh, and that month, oh my gosh, like, he had so many visitors. He was so popular. There was a conveyor belt of like people. It didn't stop. He had friends from his first job, his old uni friends. People came. Like, I'm surprised people come to see someone who's that sick. Like, I thought they would find it hard, but maybe because he was, I don't know, like, he was looking ill now, but I didn't stop it. I was like, that's what got me through it. Like, I would be helping my mum cook food for people, as they were coming. It's like, that mourning period, it was a bit of a celebration of his life as well. It was, people would sit by his bedside, and they helped my hours, because I'm not sure I could have done it alone with him. They read to him. People did prayers. Sister-in-law did prayers. My mum did prayers. He wasn't very religious. I was thinking, oh my God, what must he think of this? But it was quite peaceful. And he was losing his speech, but he would hum his favorite songs. He hummed like Biggie, Hypnotize Me. He like knew the melody. Like, he was really gifted musically as well. Like, he just got melodies really quick. The EastEnders theme tune, he'd whistle. It is. I guess that's the part of the brain. They say music is one of those first memories, and therefore one of the last to go as well. And it was with him. He loved music. I think this is part of the story, the end, but for me it's so significant. Like, it's just, I was scared to bring him home. It was hard for me. I would be upstairs crying. I didn't want him to see that, or even anybody else. I couldn't deal with what was going on in my own house, but I'm glad we brought him back there. And I really do believe he had as peaceful as we could have made it for him. And on the day he passed away, it was just so peaceful. It wasn't like, anything out of the movies. I mean, it was just, he went away silently almost. And when he passed away, he was surrounded by myself, my little brother, my mum, his big sister, and a carer, like a caring assistant, and one of my cousins as well. It was just a random kind of group of people at that time. We didn't know the day he would pass away, right? So you don't plan for it. His parents weren't there. They found it very, very hard at the end. They found it hard to even visit him, but they did. But it was a big, big struggle for us to convince them to come and see him more than maybe they, and I don't know how they feel about that. But I'm glad they still came and spoke to him and said their goodbyes. So did his brother, his sister-in-law, and his nephew. His niece was too young. And he went away peacefully. And then afterwards, that's it really, isn't it? Because that's, I don't know how you describe the end when you're talking to somebody or when you're writing it. I didn't know how to write it, but you just got to say it in its, the rawness of it is that he just left. That's it. He just left. People feel different things at the end. I did feel a release. I felt a warmth in the room. And I know I felt that because that room was always freezing cold. Like it was our coldest room in the house, the front of the house, the dining room, wooden floors. And I'm like, there was a warmth and a light for me. And I was like, it's really weird. I'm not spiritual or religious, but I felt these things. But the biggest thing I felt on losing Ty on that day, the 17th of April, 2018, was like a release. I felt a release. It's so strange. I felt, I don't want to be as flippant as saying a weight off my shoulders, because I feel guilty for saying it, but I felt my pain had also gone. There was a burden, there was a pain, there was something I was carrying for 3 years. And I just thought, thank God he's not in pain, because that's the worst of it, the pain. And I just thought that nobody deserves that. Obviously I was so sad, but I was just relieved that he wouldn't be in pain anymore, not another day. And we immediately went into the funeral arrangements. Immediately, there wasn't even a breather. I don't know why, but I guess that's just, maybe in grief, that's just something to do. And that's why we have funerals so quick sometimes. And it consumed a lot, but at the same time, I was almost like floating in the background. Like my brother and his sister-in-law took over, his friends took over. They did the most amazing kind of funeral reading booklet with his pictures, his life story, his loves and things that he liked, poems. That kind of like consumed, I just had to be like the decision maker, the CEO of a funeral. So weird. It's like, yeah, guys, that's fine. It's all fine. Like I was that person to run things by, more than even his own parents. But that's the responsibility of a spouse, that's what I owed him. And I knew instinctively, like when people asked me, I just felt things were right or wrong. So I never hesitated when they asked me. I was like, yeah, it's that or that, black or white. I knew Ty. I'd met him when I was 18 and he passed away when he was 36. I knew him for 18 years. Like I knew him. Then yeah, he'd been given the most amazing send-off. And see, that's just one big, huge story. And then I suppose after that was me alone. So alone. Like I had amazing family. I immediately packed up my house and moved in with my mum and dad. I don't know, you don't even question if you would do that. I just did it. But it was hard living with my parents. Like I was so independent. So I'd moved out of home after university, more or less. So to go back maybe 2 decades later was just a bit odd, especially as they were so protective over me and I'm not used to being fussed over. Like my mum just wanted to hug me. I'm like, we don't do that. like I'm not being cold and I'm not being that I don't understand, that I'm not grieving. But for me, also I don't know, and I didn't do the right thing. People, what did you do for your grief? How did you, cope? I didn't cope. I gave it a bravado. Like I gave this strong Rammi, like Rammi's strong. Everyone knows that I'm no nonsense. I can be quite harsh. But I went out. I went out with people who didn't know me in Thai. I did crazy things. One of the first thing I did was just go on holiday. I went to Canada. And that was quiet and peaceful. I visited Ty's birthplace. But now looking back at it, gosh, it just seems like it's something I should have done. And it felt like people expected me to do something so like epic to mark his legacy in a way. And I felt a weight to do these things sometimes rather than me wanting to do them. But it was fine. I really enjoyed my stay, but it wasn't. I was going back to somewhere where we went on holiday a lot, so it was strange. It was just odd, peculiar. I loved my family out there. They really looked after me, but I just didn't want to really be there without Ty. So that felt weird. And then, yeah, I came back and I lived and I got on with things. Actually, I really did, and I did a few things to mark him. We did a few memorial things. But and this is the crazy thing now, I suppose, 6 months after I lost Ty, I met Jay. That's the crazy part of my story.
I want to speak about that if we can.
Yeah.
So, if you're committed to not only enhancing your mental health, but also your physical well-being too, then you need to check out our new sponsors, Health Excel. Providing you the best superfood blends on the market in their non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, and of course organic formulas. They bring you superfoods like no others you have seen on the market. They also don't just stop there, as they provide you free consistent information to educate and empower you on your overall health and well-being journey. So don't just stop at the end of a Find Your Voice episode. Get yourself some Excel blends and put the odds in your flavour. Once it goes live, there will also be a unique discount for anyone who comes from the Find Your Voice podcast, as you guys are now part of my family and I only want to see you thrive even more. So check out the links in the description below and get notified as soon as they go live. Back to the episode.
This is going to be a really important thing, but what I want to do, because I know my brain is definitely nowhere near Ty's brain. I'm going to forget a lot of the things that I do want to touch on that we've just spoken about. So if I can just go back ever so slightly, but I definitely do want to speak about that, because that's going to be such an important part for anyone who has experienced loss and the process of moving on. To begin with, you've got me sniffly here, by the way. So I'm probably going to sniff for the rest of the show. When I read your story and now you explaining it, I don't know whether it's because of cancer and having lost people myself, and maybe people listening can resonate with this. I'm so grateful that you've openly shared your story and even the perspective of experiencing loss before the loss. And when you said that, it resonated with me deeply, because right now in this moment, not to make this anything about myself, but my uncle is terminal with cancer as well. And I've seen the dynamics of his wife, my auntie, and they're like my second parents, become from a married couple to now a carer type relationship. So I'm seeing it, and the whole experience in loss before the loss, that's how I've been feeling in the last 6-7 months since we've kind of had the news. And when you were saying about the burden and stuff, a lot of that resonated with me, because it's not a burden, but sometimes it's just, you just want to kind of close it and make sure that the person's not in pain. And I think grief is one of those things that there is no right or wrong answer. I think we have to be brave enough to do the things that we need to do in order to cope. For example, when you lose someone, we almost go into, well, I know for myself, into caring mode again for the other people who have lost that person as well, i.e. for yourself. I'm sure Ty's family and your family, they became of some importance to you in terms of, I now need to be there for them. But then what about you? Like, sometimes we have to just be that little bit selfish first. And I think anyone listening to this, I do want to say this as well, or anyone that knew him, I think, we can definitely all agree that the world definitely lost an angel there. I know how you speak about Ty. You don't even acknowledge how inspirational or resilient you are. It's just Ty. And I think you need to acknowledge yourself as well for what you've been through. But I can fully understand. He's a guy who, he almost commanded this type of aura. I'm almost got like a vision in my head of what he was like. You have certain people who, when they come into a room, everyone gravitates towards them. And I have a few, my family and friends, and I'm always thinking, what is it about this person? Like, I wish I could just sprinkle some of that on myself, for example. And you mentioned his kindness, his proudness, he was intelligent. And as you were saying all that, and you spoke about his condition and how you guys never really never really spoke about it until probably the latter part of it, and how he was so optimistic. There was a quote that I literally, I think I read it over the last few days, and it really hit home with me. And it's that hope is the only thing stronger than fear. And I think
Mm,
as human beings, and I'm not a religious person by any stretch of the imagination, but sometimes when I try and understand why, like my family, some of my family are quite religious, I'm thinking, why are you so religious? And they've been through adversity, they've been through hard times, as many of us have. And I realize it's the element of hope they're grasping onto, that something bigger or something outside of their control can maybe keep them going. So that's what I just want to do. Obviously, just thank you and acknowledge you for your strength and stuff. There was so many points going through this, so many things that I want to speak about. I want to speak about the final month, if we may, more so
mm.
for anyone else now potentially going through this. This is a question that you may not have an answer for, you may have some sort of answer for, but what would you have appreciated people saying to you, let's say in the final month, when you knew this was the last month? Because I'm thinking now from a perspective of people in my family who are going through this, I don't know what to say. And most of the time I kick myself, because what actually happens is I end up saying nothing. And I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't know if that is the right thing to do. Again, I'm sure there's no right or wrong, but if there's anything that you, maybe in your experience, that you think, if somebody's going through this or somebody's just gone through this, what are the kind of words or comforting things that may help?
Really interesting. I think I'll be there for you afterwards. Like, I think I needed maybe to hear a bit more of and really believe like that. I think people were there for me, just me as well. Unconditionally, without doubt, my family were. Sometimes his friends, I felt, oh, and I think that's just the reality of it. They were his friends. Like, my friends were there for me, but he was so much more popular. So he had more friends. His friends became my friends because we were married and knew each other for so long. He was definitely more popular than me. Like, I don't know. I'm social, but he was just, like you said, he had that aura. People loved Ty. And I think I was scared in losing Ty, I would start, my life would unravel and I would lose people. And at the time, I wanted to hear a bit more about how maybe people would definitely be there for me. But you know what, Aaron, like the thing is, they didn't say it, and a lot of people weren't there for me. Like, I have to be harsh about how I felt. So maybe they didn't say it because maybe they knew they wouldn't be or they couldn't be. I never heard it, and the actions didn't live up to it. And that's like, I don't want to sugarcoat, because I know some people who've had losses, they have this amazing strength of support group around them, and I didn't have it. I had it from my own family, and I had people, some very good friends who I can count on one hand, but there was a much wider circle who I start beginning to lose. I have to take some responsibility in that and maybe push people away, but I'm the one grieving. Like, you be there for people, like be there. Don't just say I'll be there for you. Show them, check in with them, show up, like actually just show up. People left. You've been ghosted. Like, you hear that expression and the youngsters say it. I was majorly ghosted. It allowed me then, in a way, maybe it was a release, because maybe that needed to happen for me to rebuild my life again. Maybe I needed that. That wasn't their plan. It wasn't my plan. Maybe I needed to disconnect from my old life so dramatically that I could build a new life. So, but in that moment, in that last month, what I needed to hear is that people would be there for me and genuinely mean it, not just say it. So yeah, that's what I think I would have liked. But then the way it works out, doesn't it? So
No, absolutely. I agree though. I think when you're saying be there for people, that's the most important thing. I think I'm probably not going to articulate this that well now, but it's one of those things. For example, when you see somebody who's just broken their arm, you're like, that must be painful. I feel for you. And then instantly you forget about it. But then if you go and break your arm that same day, you know what that person's just been through, because you're experiencing it every single moment. A little bit like loss. It's very difficult to empathize with someone unless you've been through some element of loss yourself.
That's it.
Again, I'm not sticking up for people, but I'm sure that there are definitely genuine people. The same with my life is sometimes people can just ghost you, but I also believe there's also people who just don't know the right things to say.
Oh,
Very,
totally.
very taboo subjects. These are very difficult conversations to have. Sometimes you, again, like I mentioned earlier, the fear of saying something wrong almost paralyzes you from saying something at all. But being there for people is the most important thing. And I'm just going to say a very quick story that one of my very, very good friends from university, he lost his father. And I, having lost quite a few people over the last 6 or 7 years, and then obviously in the summer I lost one of the most important people in my whole life. I was able to be there more for him because I was also going through it myself. And what
Mhm.
I noticed is when I went through this loss, all my friends and family were there for me within the first few days. And then after the funeral, you get the odd text, and then the next week you maybe get one text, and the second week everyone's back to normal. He was the only one who consistently every week would check up on me and just make sure that, how are you? If you want a conversation, let's talk. And bearing in mind, me and him don't have phone conversations. We're very much on WhatsApp, but it's completely changed the dynamics. And I'm so, so grateful for him for being there for me, for actually, like you said, showing me. And it could just be as simple as a text saying, I'm still here for you. Like if ever you need to talk or anything. And that sounds really simple, but for me, that was like the biggest blessing. And I had a rocky few days last week, and I don't think it ever goes away, and I don't think you can control it either. Some days I feel completely numb, some days I feel an absolute mess, and having those texts here and there just keep me happy. But it also reminds me then to check in on other people as well. We can all
Yeah.
write these fancy Instagram posts like we should all talk and we should do this, but sometimes what we should actually do is, if somebody just been through something or they're going through something, is actually take that effort. Because sometimes when you're in that dark place, like you were going through the motions, you were going on holidays, you were probably doing some erratic behavior just to try and cope and keep your mind
Yeah,
busy.
definitely.
You would have benefited a lot from people actually reaching out to you because you probably weren't in a position to reach out to them. So I think
That's it.
yeah, I think that's amazing advice there for anyone. I'm sure, again, I'm trying to stick up for some people here that they probably did have you in their thoughts, but again, we don't know what we don't know. And this is one of the things I really try and do with Find Your Voice. Is to have those awkward conversations that hopefully in a year or 6 months or whenever it is, they're no longer awkward, and we can just be open to just reaching out to people and actually being there for people.
Totally. And that's it. I can explain it the way you're saying it. I can explain it now. It's just at the time I couldn't understand it. And I know I was angry. I still can be angry about it. That stuff than losing Ty, like more how people treated me. And I know, gosh, I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of me if I was
Yeah, of course.
I wouldn't want to be that person. Oh, I might just say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. I know I snapped at people. I was harsh with people. I cut people off. But I wish like some very small group of people, and they know who they are, they stuck it out. Like they just stuck it out. They're like, she just needs to vent sometimes. And so it made my circle and my world a whole lot smaller. But I think I'm good with that as well. Now I'm good with that. Yeah.
No, I agree. And I think it's funny because you mentioned something earlier when you were speaking about how you guys, after realizing what he was going through, you started to prioritize things. I think that was your exact words. And I always look at elderly people. So I'm very fortunate now. Me and my wife, we've moved into an area where actually we're the youngest, probably by about 50, 60 years in our little community. We've got like a nice little network of elderly population. And what I realized with the elderly and the lessons from them is, as you start to get older, you have no problem cutting people off because you realize that time is very, very short, and you have a few moments a day or a few hours in the week where you can spend it. So what they actually do is they focus on the more meaningful stuff in life. So what you just said there, I think it's a blessing almost in disguise. And I'm the same. Adversity teaches me so much. It teaches me a lot about my character, but it also teaches me about who's also there for me as well. And
Mhm.
I'm of that nature where I will try and be there for anyone. I'm talking about a random stranger can message me and ask me a question about property, and I'll spend the next 3.5 hours trying to help this person. knowing probably in the back of my head they're not going to take that advice and then go somewhere else, but I've just wasted 3 hours of my life which I'm never going to get back. And one of the things I've started doing, especially since the first lockdown this year in 2020, was to start being selfish and saying no. And that was like the most difficult thing in the world, but as a result of it now, similar to yourself, I'm just closing that circle. It's great to have loads of friends and family. It's great that I love, and I was smiling as you were saying it, to one day when we pass away, to have so many people come on a conveyor belt like Ty did for his funeral, because that's your legacy. That's, you meant something to people. But it's also important to recognize, well, what actually matters right this second in terms of like your inner circle. And I'm grateful that you have that now. And I think as you start to share your stories, you'll meet other people who will come in that you may not have even known for ages. I have a completely different network, and although a lot of us are online, there are some people I genuinely care about, and I call them my Find Your Voice family, because they've taught me so much, and they've actually been there for me through messages, through voice notes, and it's those little moments that mean everything to me.
That's exactly it. It's opened up a massive, same with my story. It's opened up whole new relationships. You know, the grieving community, not so much the widow grieving community, but I really resonated with other people who are brave enough to tell their grief stories. Like, I've made amazing friends like Gurinder of a drug named Hope, who's just so inspirational, and who's actually one of the main people who's really encouraged me to start sharing my story. You know, and I wish there were other widows or widowers who I could connect with more, and that's my ambition actually through doing this with you. Like, I've heard of them or seen them, but our stories are a bit different. So I think maybe, I don't know if there's always a connection because of, you know, so, but I hope I can help somebody. There must be somebody who's going through the same similar things that I did.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I think you will do that. And I think Gurinder, who's obviously been on the show before, bless her, she sees me like a little brother, and I genuinely see her like my older sister, because when I first heard her story, and this was probably about 12 months ago, I remember sitting there and the hairs were raised on my arm and I was just numb for like an hour. And again, that was about baby loss, something that I've not experienced yet. It affected me so much. But what I saw was the power of her story. And then she's obviously created this incredible community. And I think the same will happen with yourself. And I feel like, being Asian myself and speaking about mental health and speaking about anxiety and shyness, when actually you look at my profiles, I'm quite present on social media, so you wouldn't necessarily assume that that's me, that I struggle with all this stuff behind closed doors. When I started sharing that, it actually gave a lot of my friends and, you know, my younger siblings inspiration and insight as well, and it started to change their conversation. So I think you're definitely going to change conversations. People will resonate, although it's not the exact same story.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. There's similarities there. And what I do want to do now then, if we may, is move over to probably the second chapter of your life, which was the final month of obviously the bad news and Ty passing away, but then moving on, not just with your parents, but then dealing with that grief and then onto another relationship, if we may.
Yeah, and I think this is the kind of, I didn't want Jay to be around when I told the second part. Yeah. He's just walked in with a baby. It's all right. We'll still send him somewhere. But I think this is where I think, for me, the different part of it, when you read about grief and how people deal with it, there's not many stories like this, I think, where the person who definitely is still grieving, which is me, going out and unexpectedly. So I just started I was actually trying to talk to widows and other widows online, but I did sign up to an online dating site. I don't know why. I don't know. I don't know if there was any reason to it at the time. I suppose I was lonely. I was just probably looking for a bit of company and to meet on a few dates, and that was all I expected. And I wanted it to be a stranger. Was that weird? I don't know. I didn't want it to be anybody I knew or through anybody I knew. I thought maybe in the long term, a year, 2 years down the line, that might lead to something, because I know other people had met partners that way, but I didn't expect it for me that quick. I really, people say, oh my God, like, and this is a judgment of what happened. It's been really hard. And I have to be honest that it still is difficult dealing with that. To the extent, all those people, even the closer inner circle, definitely had red flags. You know, what is she doing? Like, has she gone out of her mind? And it wasn't just about Ty. They were concerned about me. I know it was about me. It wasn't about disrespect or something like that. They were just like, gosh, you know, who is it and what's going on? Because it was so quick. But I just connected with Jay, and it was just like somebody had been sent to rescue me. And you shouldn't rely on a relationship for that. He is a dad. He has 2 boys from a previous relationship. He's a teacher. He's younger than me. He's 6 months younger than me, but in a way, he's wiser and older and just lived. I mean, he's not experienced trauma like me, but he's been through a difficult time with divorce and all of that. And he just got it. Like, he didn't have to gravitate towards me. He didn't know much about me, but we clicked. And, you know, it was just a distraction. We just enjoyed London, going out. This wasn't much before the whole COVID stuff struck, but we really lived. I lived again, basically. I did some of the stuff I actually enjoyed doing with Ty, traveling. And we went on a few short holidays. I suppose we had such an intense kind of whirlwind romance, like really, that we got to know each other so quick, because he knew I was still grieving. He asked about Ty. He respected Ty. He wanted to know more. But he also said, well, okay, but like he was asking me about what I wanted with my life as well. He was so interested in me. And I think I was craving that security, that interest, that all of those things that you get in the early days of any relationship, really. And like 6 months down the line, I'm like, I know I want to be with this guy. I'm not talking about marriage. I'm not talking about anything like that, but I know I'm old enough to not waste a minute. And I know I'm wise enough because of what I've been through not to waste a minute, because life is too short. I was so sure that I wanted to start again. Like I had no hesitations for myself. My only real concern was, what the hell will people think? I was so worried about the judgment. And I was worried because it was true, especially in the Asian community. But you can't win. You're either meant to be a grieving widow dressed in black for months on end. And then if you do that, oh gosh, there's something wrong with her. She's not coming out of her bedroom. She just cries all day. We don't want to be around her. She's so depressing. Like, you can't win either way. And I was still doing all of that stuff. Yeah, I was still living my life. It's like I had almost 2 sides of me. And not that one was fake and one was real. I literally was living these 2 lives: one, the grieving widow, and 2, somebody who just met someone who's amazing. And one, we wanted to think about a life together, like dare think about it. I had so much anxiety. Jay had dealt with my anxiety. Like, he helped me through it. I had panic attacks. About people's judgment, but also just about, is this the right thing? Am I, rushing? And he just helped me and calmed me down and told me not to overthink things. That's something that Jay always says, like, don't overthink it. Let's just go with the flow and see where that takes us. Don't put too much expectation on yourself or our relationship. But at the same time, he was like, what the thing with Jay, and he was quite clear with me, like, well, wait a minute, at the same time, I do need to protect myself as well. Like, he needed to protect himself because he had children. So, he didn't want to just be a phase. He was patient. He said, I'll be with you for as long as you need me, but I need to know that this is going somewhere, because I've got children and I need to protect myself. I've also been through things, and I respected his honesty, and that helped me too. And in my grief, he helped me deal with the loss of Ty. We went back. I didn't go with anybody else to the place where I scattered Ty's ashes. I went with Jay. I couldn't go with my mom or dad. I couldn't go with his friends. I just couldn't find someone. I didn't want to go alone. I went with Jay. It's so strange, but I felt a connection through him to Ty as well. He's like he has a great outlook. He's really positive, and so is Ty. So in a way, it's like, gosh, people have asked me, is there some, what are the things in common? And there is. They're both incredibly intelligent. They're both incredibly positive. And I think I just need that in a relationship, right? There are things when you have relationships that you do find in common with somebody who you're attracted to, and that positivity, that mindset, that intellect is something I was attracted to. But Jay was more of a father, more of a caring figure, which I think I needed as well at the time, because he was a great dad and really hands-on, and practical kind of hands-on, just take care of things for me, which helped. So I had a lot of things to deal with. I trusted him almost implicitly straight away. I think that's the hardest thing for my family to understand. They get it now. Like they get it now, but at the time I think they were really weary. Well, wait a minute, this strange guy shows up, she's a widow, and I got quite lucky in my life with Ty, and me, we both looked after ourselves, financially. And so I know I was stable, and I think people were suspicious of Jay, of why he was around. But and he had to deal with that, and he still deals with that. People doubt maybe his intentions, which I hate, because his intentions are completely pure. And I hate the fact that he has to deal with, why is he with me? What's the real reason? As if I can't, as if I'm not worth it in my own right, if it has to be for something else. That made me angry. And that's the thing with grief. I was angry because of other things, but then I was really angry about how people were treating me and Jay. And it was probably a distraction for too long, to be honest, worrying about what other people thought. I think I was preoccupied by it almost. Because image is important, isn't it? And perception is important. And for me, I cared what people thought. We all care what people think. Like, as much as we hear those quotes, don't, try not to care about what people think, live your life. No, like, what people think and how they respect you and view you is so integral to what you are as a person. And I didn't want them to think I was weak. I didn't want them to think I was desperate. Oh, I hated to think people thought I was desperate, for goodness sakes. Like, I'm really confident. I'm really outgoing. I was. And it reignited some of those things that I knew I was anyway, that maybe I'd lost over the past kind of a few years. I know how I am as a person before I met Ty, or even when I was with Ty. And Jay reminded me of those qualities, like to stand up for myself, to live my life positively, to put one foot forward, try not to look back, and not think too much about what if. I don't like to ask what if a lot, because it just puts doubt in your mind when you can move forward instead of looking backwards. I'm in a really good place now. Like, I still have some stresses about losing people, because not of the Thai thing, but more because of the J thing. Actually, that's hard. Like, I know that certain people who supported me at the time were there for a reason in my life, and I miss that, because they were good people and they served, I don't want to say they served a purpose, but I miss that relationship, because I wish it was there again for me in this point in my life, because I still have challenges, and I actually wish I was there for those people, because they've had challenges. But that the cliche as it is, people do drift apart, but I'm never the one to close the door, and it will always be open to anybody, who might be curious about how I'm getting on, or, oh, remember Rammi, the one who lost her husband, wonder how, look me up. I'm still the same girl, still like feisty, annoying, overly, probably a bit harsh, passionate, definitely passionate. Like you say, sometimes speaks before she thinks. Like, I can't excuse my weaknesses. I have many. And I think being harsh to people along the way, I'm defensive. I think I'm really defensive, and I'm so protective, first over Ty, and now over Jay. Like, I'm protective over my little family. Like, I'm fiercely protective, and I like to really stand up for things I believe in, and I believe in the people I love. So I think that's why I feel judgment more maybe than next person would in this situation. And so, a year after meeting Jay, something Jay encouraged me to do, or he wanted to do. He was happy with his situation of having 2 boys, but he always envisaged having a big family. I just envisaged having 1 child. That would have been amazing. And he encouraged me to try IVF one last time. And I lost count the number of times I tried before, but with Jay and I, we went to a private clinic, and amazingly, I never had any expectations. That's almost maybe partly the reason for the success. I don't know. I just went into this treatment this time with let the doctors make all the choices, decisions. I'm just like a bit of a guinea pig on whatever they say to do. I'll do it. I'm not going to think too much this time. I've always thought about it too much last time. And it was harsh on my body and stuff, but I really felt supported by Jay. And to be fair, when I did IVF before, I felt pretty alone. This time, I think, and I don't know if I would have been successful if I hadn't had IVF, but I'm not getting any younger, so that's why I went ahead and did it. I knew I wanted a baby. I've always wanted a baby. And 9 months on, Tara Jasmine was born on the 1st of August, 2020, in the middle of a major pandemic. Tara was born on what would have been Tyrone and my 11-year wedding anniversary, which is crazy. Because she was due on the 31st, and I was always like, oh, it's a bit close to a key important date. I was induced, and how labour goes, and it was, she arrived by C-section, so it was amazing, but it happened on the 1st of August, and so many weird coincidences in life and dates and things like that. So the 1st of August being one, and just other dates we share with kind of my memories of Ty. The 17th of April is the day he passed away. The 17th of December is Jay's birthday, and there's crucial dates. And he's a weird one with numbers as well, as was Ty. He saw a number in his life throughout his life, and he never knew the meaning of it, and it was the number 1. And he said, I never knew. I always come across it, the first this, first that. It never meant anything to him in terms of his children's birthdays, his mom's, dad's, anything like that. And so Tara was born on the 1st, and I'm also born on the 1st of June. So he's like, well, whether you take meaning or not, it's just a nice feeling anyway, just to think of some of those coincidences. And we also named her Tara, but we couldn't decide on a name. Jay liked Jasmine, I liked Tara. So we put them together. And we gave her, without thinking about it, completely accidentally, the same initials as Tyrone. And it was just a strange one. When you saw it, literally, I think somebody texted me, oh, TJ. Oh my God, TJ's what Ty was called. So, yeah, and that's it. That's kind of where I am now. And people say, how are you dealing with your grief 2.5 years on? And it's still short term, really, isn't it, when you think about the lifeline of how long you're going to live, hopefully. And this, for me, is still early on. I do recognize that there's aspects of my emotions I'm still dealing with, memories that still come up, coincidences or reminders, whether it be a TV show or a song, that I go quiet a lot. I think that's when Jay knows to kind of leave me alone to my feelings and thoughts. He used to talk about it with me and more, but now as time goes on, I just need that time. This is a moment, something happens. This is a moment. Just let me process what's going on. There's a lot of reminders in my life because Ty and I had done so much. We'd gone to a certain bar in London or a certain restaurant, or we did a lot in our relationship, and less so with Jay and I because we've had a baby early. And then look, it's a global pandemic, so we're confined to the house a bit more. So I've not been able to have as many experiences with Jay like that. So I think he sometimes feels it oh, oh, you can see the look on his face. Oh, she's been here before. It's hard for him to surprise me.
Of course, yeah.
And I feel for him, but I just hope we can create our new memories, different ones, just moving in together properly, because we're kind of in between houses at the moment, and bringing up a child, that's going to be something completely new and amazing for me. So yeah, we've both got our pasts, and I think that those pasts are really, we needed to live. Jay needed to live his life, I needed to live my life, and we needed to come together at this point in our lives. I think that's what it comes to.
Absolutely. And I mean, firstly, obviously, I wish you, Jay, and now your 3 amazing kids,
Yes.
much more happiness and blessings moving forward. I think you've both had your fair share of adversity, and maybe now, how we spoke about a few moments ago about prioritizing things in life. I think you almost get like a new lease of life in terms of an appreciation for life. Sometimes when you go through such adversity, that now I want to just capture this moment and savor and make as many great memories as I possibly can. And as you were saying that, especially the initial bit, so obviously for anyone listening who can't see us, being in the Indian community culture and growing up, there is so many weird things that Indians expect you to do, such as, the grieving widow thing, and how you should respond to grief, or when's the right time, should you remarry, should you do all of that stuff. And it just never ceases to amaze me of people having so many opinions and judgments on other people's lives, when there's 100% chance their lives and their actions aren't perfect too, but yet they still have their opinions. And I think sometimes we just have to cloud that out and see what's important, because at the end of the day, the 24 hours that you're living for yourself. They're not there all the time, they're just there to throw their opinions in for a few moments of the day. But you mentioned some other stuff as well, and again, I was trying to understand from your perspective, and you said this, and we spoke about it earlier, about how you experienced loss before your loss, and even this time around with the IVF, you wasn't alone in this moment, because obviously Jay was with you, and it wasn't just like your loss wasn't just something that happened on the 27th of April. You were actually going through it for a while. So although some people can potentially see that as, well, you've just had a loss and all of a sudden you're in a relationship, well, actually you've been almost grieving for such a longer period of time, if that makes sense.
It is that, and the only person who gets it is my mother. Like, she gets it.
I love that.
I saw my daughter change when she started losing her husband. She adored Ty, she loves Ty, but she got it. That's when they can put their, and I respect her so much, because she can put her own grief aside for her son-in-law, right? For her daughter's happiness. And yeah, that's why they are.
They absolutely are. And it's just such a great blessing that you connected with Jay, because some people don't ever get the opportunity once. You've been fortunate to have had that blessing twice, so I see no reason why you wouldn't grasp onto that. And it's funny, because as you were speaking as well, I was laughing, because when me and my wife first got married, so I think we've known each other now, I'm going to say 10 years. I don't want to get in trouble. 11 years, 10 or 11 years.
It was a safe number, about a decade.
Yeah. And we've been married coming up to 5 years now. And we used to laugh in the first year or so of marriage that, God forbid, if anything ever happened to one of us, that the other person would have to live a lonely life and just think about the other person, almost kind of like in jest and laughing about it. Yet I think we're both not naive enough to know that there's 7 billion people in the world, and we're more likely to be compatible with so many thousands of other people. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The world is a huge place. And I think knowing what we know now, we've been openly saying it for the last 2 or 3 years, that God forbid if anything ever happens, and we've spoke about even the care relationship, obviously through experiences in my own life. I've said, look, that's your time to go and heal and find what you need to do, whether that takes you 6 months or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't have those judgments. And I think a lot of it is having these open conversations, because I'll be honest, I'll say 10 years ago, if for example, I'm with someone and something happened to me, and I'm watching from the clouds above and I see them get with somebody else 6 months later, I'll be thinking, hey, what about me? Do you know what I mean? But I think as you go through life, you learn and you wise up a little bit. And recently I just seen Louise Blythe. I'm not sure if you know her. She was a guest on our show. If you don't know her, I'll introduce you. And Louise had an incredible story about when she lost George, and recently I seen on Instagram during like the pandemic and this crazy year, and it was one of the happiest memories I've had of this year, because there's not been many, where she got remarried, and just seeing her happy, her new
That's
husband and her
amazing.
2 boys happy again. I was like, this is brilliant, because I'm sure there was so many years and so many moments and so many hours where she probably didn't think she'd ever get happiness again. So
Yeah.
for anyone listening to this, and especially from myself, is we should be smiling and beaming that you've now found happiness again, and Jay's found happiness as well. So that's all I want to kind of end with on that note,
Yeah.
is that I wish you guys all the best, and it's great that you've found that again. And again, thank you so much for being so open and sharing this, because these are conversations that you just don't hear about. But I truly believe that when people can just sit with them and have an open mind and actually understand why we do what we do or what we're going through, that maybe they'll act different. And we do need to kind of move away a little bit from the norms as well, especially in the Asian community. I mean, I never got to meet my nonna, which is basically my mom's dad. So he had passed away when my mom was 15. But my gran, I'll call her gran for anyone listening. So that's my mom's mom. She's probably the strongest person I've ever known. And we all say that, our parents, our grandparents are very, very resilient, strong people. And,
Mm.
she lost her husband very young. I think she had like £3 in the bank account. She didn't realize there was like no life insurance. She lost her son to alcohol. That was my uncle who died this summer. Her other son's an alcoholic. They've both been alcoholics for 30 years. My mom obviously suffers chronic depression. So she's always just in battles of adversity, and yet she still persevered. I think she retired a few years ago, but that was due to like dementia. And I
Mm.
sometimes sit there and I think, would she have ever remarried, or could somebody else have come into her life and
Mm.
looked after her the way that she deserved to be looked after? Because she's one of the most amazing people and kindest people in the world, yet she had this stubbornness and this thing about her that, no, we don't do that. And it was almost like
Yeah.
set in stone. When I heard that when I was younger, I would just agree with it. But now, slightly, I'd like to say wiser, thinking and listening to that, I'm like, what do you mean we've always done that? Like that's not really like a rational explanation for why we do what we do. I mean, if there's a better way of doing stuff, why not go and do it? And it really amazed me that, bless her heart, now she's pretty much lived all her life, and now slowly she's deteriorated, that she could have actually probably had somebody look after her and treated her the right way, that I hope Jay does with yourself. And it's just a different perspective shift. And this is something that I hope, if people are still listening to us at this point, they really take that on board and just have a bit more compassion for other people and just want people to be happy.
Yeah. Just give yourself a chance at that
Of
happiness if
course.
you thought about it. I mean, I did it without thinking about it, but if you've been thinking, maybe if you're a widower, to hit online dating, or if there's somebody you're interested, I mean, don't feel the guilt. Just live your life. I think it's so important. You only get that chance of happiness once, and you're worthy of it, and you deserve it. You've yeah.
100%. Every single one of us are worthy of it. I'm so glad that you guys have found it now. I'm sure the little boys are so excited having a younger girl in the house as well. And
Yeah.
it's just such a beautiful family. So I'm so happy with that. One of the things I would say, Rami, I could probably speak to you for another few hours, but I'm gonna just kind of end it on just a few questions, if I may, just a little bit about you, and your personality. And then what I want to do is give obviously anyone listening to this, if it has resonated with them, or if they feel that this story will help somebody else, to share it, but then be able to connect with you as well. So if that's okay with yourself as well, I want you to obviously tell us where we can find you. But I want to end on two of the questions that I ask all of my guests. And the first one is about reflection, if I may. And I'm a firm believer that hindsight is a wonderful thing, because as I've said many times in this episode as well, we can always think of ways that we should have done stuff to make life easier or with less heartache and get to places quicker. But at the same time, it's that journey that really teaches us so much and makes us who we really are. So what I want to know is, knowing what you know now, having gone through the stuff that you've been through, if you could maybe go back to one moment where you really struggled, maybe with that first diagnosis, for example, knowing everything you know now, what would you have said if you could have whispered something in your ears?
Ooh, I think probably to enjoy every moment, because life is too short. And I know as cliche as that sounds, but I was so preoccupied even after that diagnosis to look for the solution, the answer, the next big thing, like I said earlier. And I think sometimes I wish I'd just been in the moment a bit more and lived that day for that day to the fullest. Because I think I looked too much to the next day that it will get better. And then I probably had taken for granted the day that had gone before. So to live in that moment, I think I'd said just take it day by day. It's a hard one because I think with cancer, get so preoccupied by finding a solution and treatment. And I just think it was a whirlwind, and I got so wrapped up in that. I led it like it was almost like a project as my approach to work, and it became my approach to my personal life, like project managing a diagnosis, and you just can't do it. So life, you can't control life. You have neat edges and tidy boxes. So I think I just wished I'd lived for the day a bit.
I think that's great advice. And I think life, like you said, it's definitely too short. And one of the things I do, which for some people it sounds a bit crazy, but I use this thing called morbid motivation, where having heard stories from yourself or using the experiences from my life that I've seen, I use that as a form of motivation to try and be as present as possible and live each day. And I don't do it every day, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend I do, but hearing stories about how Ty went through what he went through, it almost instills a bit of fear in me that tomorrow I could be diagnosed with something, experiencing headaches. So then it's like, well, today you're feeling fine. Let's go and make the most of today. Let's try and live that. If tomorrow that was to happen, would you have been satisfied with what you had done today? So I think it's definitely the element of hope and inspiration that I try to get from these episodes, that this isn't all doom and gloom. This is actually a wake-up call of you being able to be present and live your life without having to go through the tragedy that yourself and Ty and his family have had to go through. So thank you for sharing that. And that does segue us to the last question. And the last question of the show is for all my guests, and it's about legacy. And we know that Ty had an incredible legacy, and I'm sure he's so happy, smiling, looking down on you right now. But this one is about you, and this is about if in 150 years time science fails to save us and all that exists is a book. And this book, it's about you, it's about your life, it's about all of the amazing, weird and wonderful things that you've achieved and done along the way. Firstly, what I want to know is, what would the title of this book be? And secondly, what would the summary at the back tell us about you?
I think the title would be Live Without Regret. And the summary would be somebody who took her experiences of her past into her future life. So I wasn't left in my past, but I took the memories and the hopes and the positives into my new life, so that I've still got that with me, and I haven't left it in the past.
Thank you, Rammi. And the best place that people can connect with you?
I'd love that. I've got a private Instagram account, Rammi_682, but and I'm still in a space thinking I prefer a private account for now, but I'm happy for people to send me a follow request on the back of this and message me about whatever. There's no limits to what I mind being asked about, and I can always think about then how I'm going to respond, but no questions too far off topic, and I just want to be able to help somebody with my story and see kind of where that journey takes me as well. It's something I'm more confident doing now, thanks to great platforms like yourself. It's taken me a real long time to find something suitable, somewhere where I can secure and comfortable. And I really want to thank you, because I've been following your podcast and your channel, and I have been asked to do other ones, just didn't feel right, and yours has. I'm also sharing my story with Marie Curie Cancer Care, and because Tyrone worked there for 7 years, and some of his friends have connected with me to ask me if I would share my perspective on grief through the loss of cancer, and so I think it's more of an internal comms channel, but I will be sharing via that charity as well. So yeah, Instagram probably the first and foremost. I'm happy to hear from any.
Thank you for the kind words. And what I will do is put all of that in the show notes for anyone as well. Please do check that out. Please do
follow Rammi on her journey as well. Wish her all the best. And obviously, if there's stuff that resonated with you in this conversation, really try and take the advice and the lessons that we've shared on this to really move forward in your own life. Life is very, very, very short. And the last thing I want anyone to do is conform to something because it's just the way that it was, or it's the way that society expects us to behave, because we potentially have opportunities around us where we can be happy. And it would just be a travesty, at least in my eyes, if you weren't to take that because you're worried about the opinion of somebody else. That would break me. So thank you so much, obviously, for all your words of wisdom today. Is there anything that you wish I had asked you just before we close the show, Rammi?
No, I think that's just a really nice way to finish. So thank you. Just thank you.
Bless you. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on. I know this is obviously been something on your mind in terms of having the courage and just the willingness to share it. So I'm so grateful that obviously you chose Find Your Voice as well. I'm sure the listeners are really, really grateful as well. And as I always say, more so because I just feel so connected sometimes when I speak with people on a deep, meaningful level, that you become part of my Find Your Voice family. And I hope everyone can vouch for this, that I truly will go out my way for anyone who's taken time out of their day to be a part of this show, to help this show grow. We are impacting people all over the world, which is, I can't even think about that. It just makes my brain go all mush. But it's thanks to people like yourself. So if there's obviously any way I can obviously ever support you in whatever you're doing, please don't hesitate to reach out. And to everyone else at home, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
And remember, this podcast is absolutely free. So all we ask in return is for you to share this with a friend and drop us a 5-star review over on iTunes. Have an awesome day.